Bro, this is the most bitch-made thing I've ever seen. The situation is more dire. Dude, Vladimir Putin literally came to the United States of America, took his out and said, suck it. And Trump gave him a blowjob, only to turn around and get nothing out of this equation at all beyond glazing Putin. What the I think this entire process is set together by Putin just to around. First of all, you have to remember something. This person right here was a KGB operative and then also the head of state basically for my entire life. You know what I mean? Like, he has a lot more experience as opposed to Donald Trump, who is genuinely an incompetent person.
And for Vladimir Putin,
this is a crazy experience, though. It is kind of wild because, like, it's got to be like a little bit of a flex, I think, that Trump is just like walking by himself to show. I mean, this is American soil, so he's like, it's to say, like, I got, you know, I don't need security, but whereas like Vladimir Putin is like obviously walking with security around him. I assume that's like a bit of an environmental flex. Vladdy to Batty is on time. Yeah.
For Putin, who is.
When was the last time like a Russian leader was on American soil? It does feel wild. I mean, these guys used to cooperate all the time. There's like a ton of photos. Putin comes to Trump directly. That's another power play. He's doing the Erdogan. That was the Erdogan. That was the Erdogan technique. The claw grip. You just keep gripping.
Good-natured. They look pretty pleased to see each other.
Bro, they literally look like lovers. They look like lovers that haven't seen one another in a long time. Is Putin wearing heels? Yes, he is, bro. Are you kidding me? He is a manlet. Putin is much shorter than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is like 6'3". Putin is a much shorter man, so he definitely is wearing heels.
An event center where there are 2 podiums set up.
This is a weird. This is weird, bro. I'm not gonna lie. This is a weird sight. You really have to be a demon to be president. Imagine palling around with someone who's killed hundreds of thousands of people, and you probably have yourself as well. I mean, yeah, these guys have bodies. Both Trump and Putin have bodies. So at that stage, it's like normal. You know what I mean? Is the entry point to being a world leader is that you have a ton of bodies. Wait, do they get in the car together? They're in the Beast. They get in the Beast together. They're kissing. Oh, you know they're kissing, bro. You know. So they do have some private time, dude. Oh my God.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. We'll come back to you in a second. The Russian president is obviously here on U.S. soil.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press.
What's he saying? What the? That's weird, dude. What is that? He's hitting an emote.
Press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, press. Let's go.
He's doing carny faces.
It looks like this is about to start. We see President Trump.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, our negotiations have been held in a constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. We have very thorough negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart for the proposal to travel out here to Alaska. It only makes sense that we've met here because our countries, though separated by the oceans, are close neighbors. So when we've met, when I came out of the plane and I've said, "Good afternoon, dear neighbor. Very good to see you. In good health and to see you alive." I think that is very neighborly.
Oh my God, why does Trump look so happy? I feel like he loves him.
Kind words that we can say to each other. We're separated by the Strait of Bering, though there are 2 islands only between the Russian island and the U.S. island. They're only 4 kilometers apart. We're close neighbors, and it's a fact. It's also important that Alaska has to do with our common heritage, common history between Russia and the U.S., and many positive events have to do with that territory. Still, there is tremendous cultural heritage heritage back from the Russian America. For example, Orthodox churches and a lot of more than 700 geographical names of Russian origin. During the Second World War, it was here in Alaska that was the origin of the legendary air bridge for the supply of military
last time he
aircraft
talked
and
about
other
the historical
equipment.
relevance of a country, he invaded it, okay? I'm just saying.
Dangerous and treacherous route over the
Last time he talked about the historical relevance of a country,
However,
of sovereign
the pilots
territory
of both countries did
that
everything to
has
bring
deep
closer
ties
the
to
victory.
Russia.
They risked their
Well, that
lives
was
and they gave it
Ukraine.
all for the common victory. It was just in the city of
Alaska.
Magadan in Russia, and there is a memorial there dedicated to the Russian and the U.S. pilots. And there are two flags, the U.S. flag and the Russian flag. And I know that here as well, there is such a memorial. There is a military burial place several kilometers away from here. The Soviet pilots are buried there who died during that dangerous mission. We're thankful to the citizens and the government of the U.S. for carefully taking care of their memory. I think that's very worthy and noble. We'll always remember other historical examples when our countries defeated common enemies together in the spirit of battle camaraderie and allyship that supported each other and facilitated each other. I'm sure that this heritage will help us rebuild and foster mutually beneficial and
a
equal
joint
ties
invasion of Ukraine.
This new stage, even during the hardest conditions.
He's going to say now the real Nazis
It
are
is
Ukraine.
known
I
that
convinced
there have
Trump.
been no summits between Russia and the U.S. for 4 years, and that's a long time. This time was very hard for bilateral relations, and let's be frank, they have fallen to the lowest point since the Cold War. I think that's not benefiting our countries and the world as a whole. It is apparent that sooner or later we had to amend the situation to move on from the confrontation to dialogue. And in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been long overdue, naturally under the condition of serious and painstaking work, and this work has been done in general. Me and President Trump have very good direct contact. We've spoken multiple times. We spoke frankly on the phone. And special envoy of the president, Mr. Witkoff, traveled out to Russia several times. Our advisors and heads of foreign ministries kept in touch all the time. And you know fully well that one of the central issues was the situation around Ukraine. We see the strive of the administration and President Trump personally to help facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict. And his strive to get to the crux of the matter, to understand this history, is precious. As I've said, the situation in Ukraine has to do with fundamental threats to our security. Moreover, we've always considered the Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation, however strange it may sound in these conditions. We have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us and terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict. And we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole. And I agree with President Trump, as he has said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we are prepared to work on that. I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works. They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress. Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very possible, and our international context, for example, between the Far East of Russia and the West Coast of the U.S. Overall, it's very important for our countries to turn the page, to go back to cooperation. It is symbolic that not far away from here, at the border between Russia and the U.S., there was a so-called international date line. I think you can step over, literally, from yesterday into tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
And I hope that we'll succeed in that, in political sphere. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements will be the starting point, not only for the solution of the Ukrainian issue, but also will help us bring back business-like and pragmatic relations between Russia and the U.S. And in the end, I would like to add one more thing. I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then, that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good business-like and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all. But we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax. But what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant. But we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss. but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nothing happened. Nothing. It was even worse than I thought. It was just him glazing Putin.
Alike, there are so many questions that remain unanswered. It's not just the future of Ukraine that remains up in the air, but ultimately its impact throughout that region. We're going to be working our sources right now. We are told that the reporters who are traveling aboard Air Force One have already been rushed out of the room gathering.
Bro, this is the most bitch-made thing I've ever seen. The situation is more dire. Dude, Vladimir Putin literally came to the United States of America, took his cock out and said, suck it. And Trump gave him a blowjob, only to turn around and get nothing out of this equation at all beyond glazing Putin. What the f? I mean, so far, that's what it looks like to me. Sagar's assessment here is the most hopeful, most optimistic one, but I don't think so. Especially because who knows what those red lines are going to look like. I also don't think that, like, Trump gives a f about red lines that EU could have set here or red lines that Ukraine could have set here. When has Donald Trump ever given a shit about whatever red lines the European Union has wanted, whatever demands that the EU has made? Like, the idea that Donald Trump is just not revealing the outcome of this ceasefire because he's like waiting to call European leaders to get permission sounds insane. We didn't get there. U.S. President Donald Trump says no deal, but progress made after Ukraine talks with Vladimir Putin. Trump says many points were agreed with Putin, but a few remain, including one he describes as significant. Putin calls out European nations out to torpedo progress as he talks with Trump were thorough and constructive. I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many points that we agreed on. I will call it NATO in a little while, and I will, of course, call President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. Yeah. The White House officials state that the luncheon between the U.S. and Russian delegations have been canceled, adding that President Trump will immediately return to Washington. This, by the way, is why it was odd to agree to EU-Ukrainian red lines in the first place. The U.S. president should only consider his own red lines ahead of a major diplomatic summit. Yeah, I don't think the Trump administration gives a f about whatever the EU and Ukrainian red lines are. What are we talking about? It so far looks like a spectacular failure, one that is actually unique. Like, you're used to Trump dominating global leaders, right? You're used to him bitching them out, having them come to the White House, sitting there as he like chirps on endlessly about, I don't know, transgender athletes or something, right? This was Putin doing that to him. And you just saw it. Like, and for a guy who cares so much about the aesthetics of domination, compare Donald Trump's meetings with like Keir Starmer, Macron, Merz, and any number of different world leaders versus the meeting that he just had and the press conference that he just gave with Vladimir Putin. He was the one in the bitch seat. And this is something that he cares about. He cares about not looking like he's being dominated. It's maybe the only thing he cares about. I feel like it's pretty crazy that he was like even smiling through the process when it's like very obvious that the deal didn't go anywhere. The meeting was a failure, and it was such a failure that even Fox News is having a hard time. I said that this was probably not going to come to like a meaningful conclusion, but the very fact that they didn't even have an outline that they could present together means that it was worse than expected. Fareed Zakaria is saying that it's good because a ceasefire is not imminent. I think that's bad. That means that like he recognized that he has no leverage, or at least Putin is capable of showcasing to Trump that he has no leverage. This is a major W for Vladimir Putin. He got to do like a flex tour, basically. We'll see what happens in terms of the conflict, in terms of like the bombings and whatnot tonight, but it feels like there is no meaningful conclusion coming anytime soon.